ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸਤਨਾਮ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਗਿਆਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਮ ਨ ਜਾਨਾ ਸਾਰ ਨ ਜਾਨਾ ਤੇਰੀ। ਸਭ ਤੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਕਲ ਰਾਖੀ ਮੇਰੀ। ਸਭ ਤੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਕਲ ਰਾਖੀ ਮੇਰੀ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। So this talk is going to be by Ramveer Singh first, me secondly. So we'll take 20 to 30 minutes each on different aspects. So by so we'll do Sikh history in terms of hatred and resistance to that, and then I'll carry on with like specific case studies of the UK and hatred within the UK or hate crime within legislation in the UK and case studies around the UK specifically and the US as well affecting Sikhs. So just a benti that no one goes live on their phones or their own media. So that's the first benti, because it's live on Basic, so that'll have you can just lift the material off there if you need it. Secondly, we are not going to take any questions while we speak for the first 20 minutes or 20 minutes each, whatever it is. So don't ask any questions while we speak. We'll take questions after that, and then we're going to switch the live off for that part, because then we might do a group discussion or some interaction with yourselves as well. So we're going to play that by ear in terms of how it goes. I just want to mention one thing at the start. So in Sukhmani Sahib, Maharaj says, Jab tare ko beri meet tab lag nihchal nahi jeet. So until we see someone, Jab tare ko beri meet, beri an enemy, meet the friend. So until we see people as a friend or an enemy, tab lag nihchal nahi jeet. Until that point, we will never get perfected concentration on God. ठीक है? So it's like when you go to the opticians, and the optician has a colour-blind test, don't they? And they show you red and green. For most of us, if we see something that we don't like I don't like Manchester United. So when I see Manchester United, the red colour is like, nah, Red Devils. Yeah? So the red colour is usually like an alarm to us to say we don't like this thing or that person or whatever it may be. ठीक है? And then the green is a green light. We like this person, we're endeared to that person or that thing, whatever it may be. But what Maharaj is saying is that we need samdirsti. So we need to remain equanimous is the word for samana. So don't ask me the translation, but that's what it is. Look it up. Yeah. So sam means you don't actually change. Your mind's equilibrium remains equal in everything it sees. So we all have to spiritually get to the level of that. So promoting hatred or difference goes against that, and so does it with promoting too much affection or whatever it may be. Now, you might think in a Sikh perspective, but we're taught to like certain things or dislike certain things. That's initially, because when you initially start in Sikhi, you need a rule book like a child needs one in nursery. But as you progress spiritually, you might be able to uncover these things and then flower and realise what the game really is. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. So Bairam Veer Singh's going to take over now, and hopefully it goes okay. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa.
WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for coming down this evening. It's been a while since I've been in Birmingham. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd and some new ones as well. So, like Bhai Harjinder Singh said, I'm going to be giving the first part of the presentation with a specific focus on Sikh Itihas. But there will be some overlap because obviously I've had sight of what Bhai Sahib will be covering as well. And I wanted to start this evening's presentation with a simple question. It's a rhetorical question, so you don't have to answer it now. But it's something that I'd like you to think about as the evening progresses. And it's a simple question, but it might be an uncomfortable question. And the question is, in a world that is seemingly telling us that we don't fit in, what does it mean to live as a Sikh? And specifically in light of our rich heritage and culture of Badshah and sovereignty, what does it mean for us in the UK 2025 to live sovereignly today? And it's an important question for us to ask and ponder over, because often hate crime is less about the physical, the throwing of the punch or the kick or the graffiti on the businesses or the vandalism of the Gurukar. It's deeper than that. It's actually about power. Power is a huge part of what we've now termed this hate crime. And it's a way of sending a message, actually. It's a way of sending a message that you need to stay in your place. And that place and how they've defined that is set by those who are actually spreading the hate and inflicting that violence. And that message also doesn't just come from a thug in the street. It runs deeper than that. It's actually systemic. It's institutional. You see it in the stereotyping in the media. You see it in the kind of the everyday biases of the life that we live. The subtlety that runs through it. So it's not always overt. There are different levels to it. So the challenge for us as Sikhs today is, how do we respond to that? Not only emotionally, because that's an immediate reaction we all have, but philosophically, but more importantly, physically. How do we organize, how do we mobilize in response to what's happening right here, in front of us all today? So that's going to be the kind of basis of my presentation. And asking, what does Sikhi teach us about power, about freedom, about living in a dignified way? So please have a think about that as we go through it, because there's plenty of examples in our itihas, in our history. But when we look at our history, Sikh history is primarily about a dialogue with power. You go back to the Guru period, from Guru Nanak Parchar all the way to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and then even beyond that, there's always this confrontation that the Sikhs, whether under the Guru Sahiban or afterwards, have with power, especially when that power is oppressive, and especially against tyranny. So that runs from 1469 up until the present day. There's been different ways in which that has been expressed and how it's found form. But Sikhs have always been socio-politically active. It's a huge part of it's in our DNA. It's a massive part of our history. And so to understand hate crime today in the UK for us, it's important to understand that it's not just a random, isolated act of madness. There's a deeper, like I said, it's systemic. And for us, that's something we can relate to because of our history and the way that the Sikh Panth has continuously strived to struggle against that. So like I said, I was asked by the Sevadars to look a little bit into our history. So we're all marking 350 years since the Shaheed Tegh Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. So briefly, let's just go back to the 17th century. Now, we all know Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji lived at a time where the Mughal state, specifically under Aurangzeb, demanded a level of conformity, right? Religious, cultural, ideological, and often that was enforced violently, through persecution. But I'm not going to go into the specifics of it because I'm assuming most of us will know that there has. But it was in the face of that power that Guru Tegh Bahadur ji made an extraordinary decision. The decision to stand up against it and to refuse to conform. So in that moment, the Guru stood up against the oppression, and it was about freedom of conscience. And what's remarkable, and we always say this when we tell others about it, is that Guru Sahib stood up for the right of others. It wasn't even the oppression at that stage. A specific example of the Kashmiri Pandits wasn't against the Sikhs. And that's really relevant today, given what's happening in the world. Often, it's unfortunate some people have the audacity to ask why we stand and raise the voice of Palestinians, for example. We're all seeing a genocide unfold in front of our eyes. But that's exactly the type of Sikh we take from Guru Sahib, to stand for others who don't have that voice. And also what makes it remarkable is that the Kashmiri Pandits for whom Guru Sahib stood up, if we look at Gurmukhi, if we look at Gurbani, Guru Sahib is often quite critical of the ways of the Pandit. So that makes it even more great. There isn't another example in world history that you'll find that comes close to this. So that's the bar that the Guru has set. It's a very high bar. Standing for others, that was what that whole prasang, that episode, that Shahidi was about. Especially, even if those individuals that you're standing for are different to us. If they pray differently, if they believe differently, the idea was that they stood for that difference, for them to exist in the world. So when the Guru gave his head in Delhi, Guru Sahib was fighting for another group to exist. It wasn't for their supremacy, it was for their dignity. And this is why in Sir Gur Soba by Kavi Senapati, who was a court poet of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, they refer to Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji as Srishti di Chadar. Puri Kainat, like it's not just, it's the whole universe. Guru Sahib is described as the protector and the shield of the entire universe. Elsewhere we'll use Taram di Chadar, sometimes we'll use Hind di Chadar. Hind di Chadar is, again, is a reference to the land, not what is maybe come in certain circles today given Indian revisionism. But we have to remember that was the Guru's political sovereignty, the Guru's Parchar in action. So sovereignty for us in the Sikh world, it doesn't mean ruling over others. It's not, because the word sovereign can mean a certain thing, especially for us in the UK with the British Crown. For us, sovereignty is first and foremost conquering ourselves, then after that, it's refusing to let any other external authority or power dictate to us or define our existence in this world. So in that moment, Guru Sahib then, for us, they transform power from one of domination and control to actually dignity and standing with the oppressed. That's where real power stands for the Sikhs. Now, if we fast forward 3.5 centuries, right, 350 years, I was asked to speak more about history, but I wanted to really get into the crux of this. How is that relatable for us today? What's the connection, right? Because I think, not just with this, but with other things as well, there's a risk of just historicizing our itihas, leaving it just as a relic from the past, and not actually taking the lessons on a moral basis, but more importantly, what it demands of us today. What's our duty? What does that Shahidi demand of us, and how should we apply it today? So what is the connection there? Because there's no Mughal emperor, there's no imperial edict, that whole system doesn't exist. But new structures of control do exist. And often those structures can be oppressive. They're a lot more quieter, they're even polite sometimes, they're less overt, like I said at the beginning. But the hate and division is written into those systems, it's written into those habits instead of the royal decree of a particular emperor or a particular king. So they still exist. And today, a young boy in Wolverhampton might have his patka ripped off in the class, and the teacher will say, oh, don't make a fuss about it. Or a Kaur will go to an interview, and a Kara may be showing, and they may say to her, we prefer a more neutral look. Gurdwara will be vandalized, the report might say it was just local mischief. And then to the extreme of what happened in this very city a few weeks ago, where a Sikh Bibi is physically attacked and sexually assaulted in broad daylight, and her attackers are saying, get out of this country. So we know that there is different levels of that hatred that still rears its head. And it seems to me as though it's happening more and more often. And with the rise of that right-wing rhetoric, which is seemingly everywhere these days, we've seen a further normalization of racism and bigotry. Because traditionally it was said that that was the extreme, just the right wing. That's what they're known for, right? In the past, the skinheads, the National Front, the BNP, whatever name we may give it. But it seems to me there's been a shift. Just by a show of hands, has anybody read the current government's white paper report on immigration? Just show of hands. Okay, there's one or two maybe. So it was published May this year. And I just want to share, if you do nothing else, just read the foreword that was written by the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who, don't forget, is leftist-leaning Labour. This is you can look it up, but this is the foreword, right? I'm just highlighted a few things. I'm not going to read it all, but let's look at the language. He's talking about the increase in migration, yeah? And he says the damage this has done to our country is incalculable. Public services and housing access have been placed under too much pressure. Our economy has been distorted by perverse incentives to import workers, blah, blah, blah. Further on, at its heart, it's a simple message of fairness. And he says, but if people want to come to Britain to start a new life, they must contribute, learn our language, and integrate. Now, language is really important. When I first read this earlier this year for work, it was shocking because you could be excused for thinking, if you didn't know who wrote it or what was packaged, that this was a manifesto from Reform UK. The language that he's using, that's what I'm saying, there's been a shift, there's been almost a normalization, but they're being very smart about it. So essentially, what he's doing and what is being normalized is that the migrants are the problem, that immigration itself is the issue. This is why the UK is facing so many different issues, economic services, the public sector is under stress. But is it the migrants? Because the migrants that I know, my parents, for example, those who I know today, those who have come in recent years, they're hard-working individuals. And actually, there's a disproportionate amount of migrants in the public services. So things like this is something that we need to be aware of. And actually, you could ask the question, you could flip it on his head. Why is it that the migrants are getting the blame for this sort of stuff? At a time where corporations, like Tesco, for example, this year are projected to report a net profit, not turnover, of £3 billion. At a time where the everyday person is being told to tighten our belt. Are going unchecked. So for me, it isn't the migrants who are driving up rents or slashing pay or avoiding taxes. It's the unchecked greed of the powerful companies, right? Which is they're not being held to account. So blaming the migrants just divides us essentially, while the real culprits actually walk away with a really healthy profit. And this is the reason why I've mentioned this briefly here, is because it's tied to this topic of hate crime and the rise of the right wing in this country and also elsewhere. These incidents, like I say, seem to be getting worse and worse, but that message is that old message is the same. And the message is that we decide what's normal and we decide who belongs and on what terms. And that you're a guest in somebody else's home. That's essentially the message that we're all familiar with, our parents were familiar with, our grandparents. My children also have experienced that already. There's 4 or 5 generations who have continuously faced that same racism. It might have changed, like I said. Maybe it's less overt now, but it still exists. So another question I want you to think about is, how is that actually different? How is living in the UK then, with that constant sense of trying to fit in or being told to integrate or assimilate, actually different to the conformity that was being imposed upon Sikhs by the Zulfikar sword? Because there is a difference, but actually if you look at it, the underlying issues still exist. Today it's more systemic and it runs through institutions. And what we see is that it's not just those individuals that are to blame, right? I'm not saying they're not to blame. We should deal with those. but it's larger than that. It's a structure that constantly pressurizes minoritized communities to fit in. And I'm using the word minoritized because, when we use the word minority community, who tells us we're a minority community? If you look on a global scale, there are actually more black and brown folk than there are white folk. Minoritized is the word, we have been minoritized. It's the language of politics in this country and actually across the diaspora. So the point being that the Gurus faced one kind of tyranny and oppression and challenged it and rose up to it during their times, and the Sikhs in our Itihas have done the same thing, but we face another. But the task essentially is the same. The task before us is to live without fear, challenge that, and claim our dignity on our terms without seeking the permission of anybody. Guru Hargobind Sahib Parchar, the wearing of the two swords, Miri and Piri, the solution actually has been given to us by the Guru very early on. And whenever the Sikhs have connected to that truth, we've seen great things happen in the Panth. And then even with Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji takes that a little bit further by giving us a specific roop, right? In creating the Khalsa, they give us the Dastar and the Kakar. The Kakar, they weren't just fashion statements, and actually I would go a step further, not wishing to offend anybody, but they're not even articles of faith. The Kakar are much more profound than that. It's political theory in action. It's the Khalsa's political outlook in action that's been gifted to the Khalsa by the Guru. And the Guru made it in a way that you couldn't shy away from that. The Guru was saying, let the tyrant know who you are. And let your courage be visible. So every time a Sikh child walks into a classroom, wearing a dastar, for me that's an act of defiance in the society that's always and constantly telling us to try and fit in. A society that teaches us to assimilate, right? Or projects integration as something to aspire to, as per the words of the current Prime Minister. A society that's constantly telling you to integrate, what it's actually doing is stripping away your distinct existence, your unique identity. And we, of all people, have a distinct identity, the root that the Guru has given us. So every time we refuse to hide our identity, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's out and about, whether it's online, for me, that's a quiet revolution. And that's a Sikha we're taking directly from the Guru. And it's a reminder that, actually being visible, it's not about vanity, it's about expressing that distinct existence and our identity. It was never meant to blend in. And actually that's why hate crime hurts so deeply, because it's not just about the attacks on the body, it's that kind of that attack on the right to appear as we are. There's a deeper, more psychological effect that takes place when we encounter and endure and experience through ongoing generations the brunt of racism and hatred and bigotry that we've been exposed to. So, just coming back to the British context a little bit, the statistics and the headlines by Harjinder Singh will go through shortly, but you may know that actually hate crime has been on the rise. It's tripled in the last decade, right? So that's what I'm saying, the trajectory of it is very alarming. And actually many of these things go unreported, right? I was actually speaking to a BB from Leeds just this week who's been having issues with their son and the son's been jumped multiple times in and outside of the school. They've reported it to the police. The recent incident, she was like, Baji, we're not going to report it because they're not doing anything with it. Even with the recent case in Albury, from what I've heard just today, the individual who was picked up has been released, and there's no further action. So there's this sense of, well, nothing's happening, so we're not going to report it. So of those reports of those crimes that are reported, I would imagine and I would predict there's probably a significant amount that actually we don't even know of. That just people just say, nothing's going to happen of it, right? But that also isn't the Sikh way either. I'm not really saying that we should report everything and just rely on an external power to give us justice. But at the same time, I understand the predicament that families, mothers, fathers, as a parent myself, we're being put in. And some of them, are just dismissed as mistaken identity, right? But actually, it's deeper than mistaken identity, because this problem is a part of society, is what I'm getting at. When I'm saying it's institutional, it's a problem that exists throughout this specific society. And it exists because this society has not made peace with difference. Difference, whether it's color, religion, culture, way of doing things, language, is constantly vilified. There is a standard set, and anything else is sub or part to that. Which is why then the other is constantly told to integrate and assimilate to the ways of that status quo. Or worse still, you could say that actually there's a benefit from that difference, right? Britain has a long history of racism and white supremacy, which we won't go into today, but also of hierarchy on basis of class, right? It's a huge problem in this country, which actually still exists till this day. So for many people of color, including Sikhs, the message is, you're welcome, but only on our terms. And that itself, already you're starting off, you're not on a level playing field. You're constantly playing catch up. And, again, going back to the example of Guru Tegh Bahadur ji, Guru Tegh Bahadur ji stood to defend another group's right to exist, like I said, right? They defended that principle that no one should be punished for being different, even if the Guru themselves had been critical of their ways. Now, it's a very profound teaching that we take from that prasang. And that's the kind of the moral bridge, if you like, between 17th century Delhi and 21st century Britain, because it still applies to us today. So the question for me, just coming to the conclusion of my part, is it's not even how do we stop the hate, because I don't even know whether we have whether it's fair to ask us to stop the hate. Maybe a better question is, how do we build a society where that difference isn't feared in the first place? And even that, to be honest with you, only those in power with the strength and the will to actually make those changes are able to do it. So these are difficult questions, they're uncomfortable questions that I think, need to be asking ourselves. And I wanted to end my section on Sarbat Dapala, right? This idea of the welfare of all. And today, we may just sing Sarbat Dapala at the end of the Ardas, but historically, it wasn't just poetry, it was policy. It was enacted by the Khalsa, by the Sikhs. It wasn't something they thought about, it wasn't something idealized. They were physically mobilizing to bring about Sarbat Dapala. And that's something we need to acknowledge and actually bring that center stage into these types of conversations. How do we mobilize on that? Because it's very easy to react with emotion, right? Which is why at the beginning I said we need to also be mindful of what our siddhant is when we're going to be mobilizing physically. And even that siddhant of Sarbat Dapala, it's unique to us. No other dharam that I'm aware of asks for the Sarbat of everybody twice daily in their ardas. Often it's for their own pala, and also often it's to the detriment of others. So it's unique to us, because for us, our freedom, our welfare, our sense of mukti and liberation is tied to the welfare of everybody else because of the Sikhya we take from Ilahi Bani, from Gurmat. So that's why when a Muslim woman is harassed on a train, or a black youth is profiled, or a Gurdwara is attacked, for us the reaction as a Sikh is the same. It's in our DNA. It's not to look away, it's to see them all as part of that same struggle. And that's what differentiates us from the rest. So, and because sovereignty, like in our tradition and in our way of life, sovereignty isn't isolationist, right? It's not just about, we're not just concerned about us. That's been there from the offset, right from the time of Guru Nanak Parchar as well. It's more relational. It's tied to our principles of seva and the wider Sikh worldview, how it is the Sikh actually views this dunya. We don't protect dignity by retreating behind walls. In our history, the Khalsa stands right at the forefront, shoulder to shoulder. So in that sense, the most powerful thing I think a Sikh can do in this climate is, in response to this rise in hate crime, is to be visible, right? To be fearlessly compassionate, to defend others' rights as fairly as our own. That's something that we all individually have the power to do, also within our local Sangat as well. So just to conclude then, the takeaways from this introductory kind of talk is, firstly, that hate crime isn't an accident, right? It's not just at the will of one individual. We shouldn't view it as just an isolated incident. It's not just kind of a few bad apples. It's a reflection of the power structures that make us feel unsafe. Secondly, Sikh history is not something we should just historicize and just view as something that took place in the past. It's not just a museum you can visit, right? It's more than that. It's actually a guide. It's a manual for how we move forward if we connect to that Sikhi. And thirdly, sovereignty today, just to try and answer that question I posed at the beginning, and we can delve into a bit more detail once we get into the Q&A session, is sovereignty today means more than just wearing the star proudly or wearing our kakars with pride. It actually means shaping society, which includes challenging that hatred and racism wherever it rears its ugly head. It might also mean educating others, but I'm of the belief that onus should be on us. That's, again, there's a lot of talk about the role of the schools and the education system in this country. There's been calls to decolonize the curriculum for decades. My children are still learning the same stuff I was learning 20, 30 years ago. So that's what I'm telling you, it's systemic. They haven't addressed these issues. And that difference is still portrayed as being a threat to people here. So I'm gonna leave it there and then hand over to Bhai Harjinder Singh. And like I said, we'll take some questions in the Q&A session. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh.
WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh. All right, I'm going to apologise first. I might have suspected COVID and I'm still recovering, so hopefully my voice holds out. That's why I've got that big bottle of Lucozade down there. It won't be 2 litres instead of 1. But anyway, just to link with what Bhairambir Singh said, there's a couple of things. I think it was the Telegraph in the last week or so. If you go on our publisher's Instagram, we've been reposting certain reels. And so if you look at the crime stats for the UK, they've been going down as immigration's increased. So that's the actual reality. So in sociology, what they call it is a moral panic. So what people create is a moral panic within the people, and something which makes you fear another person. So if you look at Edward Said and the studies of Orientalism, what he taught us was that Pear's soap. Do any of you have Pear's soap at home? Yeah? So no? So my Masi swears by Pear soap, yeah? So she lives in New York, yeah, she has this Pear soap. Sara do badiya sabban. Yeah? Now Pear soap, if you look at the adverts 50 years ago, you'll have a black person cleaning their face with Pear soap and they go white. Yeah? That's Pear soap. Any of you own a top by Hugo Boss? Put your hands up. Boys? Someone tried to give me Hugo Boss today, I said no. Because they used to make the Nazi uniforms, yeah, and they never apologised as a company, never. So Volkswagen and all the other companies that did stuff, they all apologised, did repatriations and stuff, but Hugo Boss never did. Anyway, sorry Ed, his favourite company. So now the point is that to create that moral panic in you, what's the media doing now? They're telling you, send the boats away. You voted for Brexit, that's what bought the boats. Before that, there's no legislation. The legislation was there to stop the boats. You're saying send the people away from the hotels, but the people actually protesting usually got sexual offences themselves. So make it make sense, because if you actually look at the statistics, it doesn't exist. That's the reality. And if you look at actual terrorism in the UK, it's usually the far right. So in policing and stuff like that, we all know, because we've been involved in it for many years, that the far right was always going to be, and the conviction rate is for the far right, not for Muslims, for terrorism offences. But the thing is, the terrorism offences that are highlighted in the media are going to be the ones of colour. And when we get attacked, or we suffer a crime, that's not highlighted. It's pushed under the carpet in terms of a media sense, unless we pay for adverts and stuff like that. So even with this Albury incident, it's quite shocking that 200 Sengs went and protested, walked on the streets, all these cameras on houses and everything else, and yet you got nothing. You got £20,000 reward and you can't get a scratch. Yeah? So that's aided and abetted and supported by someone in society. That's the reality of what's gone on. Yeah? And the truth is, like Bhairambir Singh said, institutional racism exists within the systems and systemically within the UK if you test it. So I had a hate crime incident, let's say, about a year or two ago, and the police were trying to force us to not proceed because they were saying, how are you going to prove that it was a threat to kill? and they were trying to force us to drop the charges or even take any investigation. Said, how can you prove it? And we said, we know people who've been convicted for threat to kill when it's someone's word against someone else's word, because they were saying to us, there's no evidence your word against them. Yet some neighbours witnessed it, let's say, yeah. So I'm not going to try having a go at the police officers in the room, yeah. So some of them are mates who are in the room, yeah. But it gets challenging for them as well, and everyone involved. So I'm going to start the presentation. I'll just use this because I'm used to this. Okay, so what is a hate crime? Now you might think that's simple. We all know what a hate crime is, but this is the actual sort of definition here, yeah. Any criminal offence which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice based on a person's race, religion, disability, sexual orientation and gender identity. So those are the 5 protected characteristics. So if under those 5 characteristics, if you suffer something which you see as a hate crime, then you can report it. Now, in terms of detection, the truth is, if you suffer from a violent crime and the person says to you, Paki or something like that, then the hate element usually gets attached to it. So where the detection usually occurs is where there's been another crime. It's not usually just a pure hate crime, if that makes sense. So that's where the detection occurs. So really, in the majority of cases where there's convictions for hate crimes, it's usually attached to another offence, where there's been witnesses in a public place or something like that, or even on the internet. Now, forms of hate crime, so verbal, calling you words that we've just mentioned, yeah, so Taliban to us, more so than other communities. Online trolls, fake accounts, bullying. So you see this openly now. You open any thread on BBC or anything which is related to this topic and you'll see so many comments on there, yeah? That's what you'll see. Vandalism, Gurdwara's attacked. Belgium Gurdwara in Brussels, that was attacked because the person mistook it for a mosque. But does that mean it's okay? That's the question you need to ask yourself. So Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib built a mosque in Amritsar. Sirhind was knocked down by Banda Singh Bahadur, and we say etna et karkai, but the Lal Mosque is still there from the Sahibzada's time. So Masjid nahi die. Even though that's the atrocities that they committed against us, we still didn't knock their mosque down. Physical attacks, violence, rape, taxi drivers from Wolverhampton, you've all seen that, yeah, and many more. Rising stats of hate crime in the UK, yet still highly underreported. So that's the main thing. The detection is very low because people like myself who've had like hatred from like the age of 5, let's say, because I've lived in highly racist areas or adjoining areas where it's been really racist, I've just got normalised to it. So if I'm going running and someone says Taliban, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I've even chased people in cars while I'm running. Yeah, it's a bit crazy, yeah. And then they drive off while I'm running after the car. Yeah, so it's like Bionic Man, yeah, trying to, with your 15 bellies out on the road. So the thing is, even the talk is quite challenging for us because we want the mic off so we can talk openly. Yeah, because as Sikhs, sometimes our Sikhis teach us to not stay within the parameters of the law as well. That's what history is teaching us sometimes. Now, this is a really interesting one. So you can actually report this, which is a non-crime hate incident. So I live literally 5 minutes drive from here now at the moment, yeah? So if someone wants to find me, I live in Birmingham now. I'm not going to Warsaw, yeah? So I live 5 minutes away from here. And now when I go for a run on the canal, 1 out of 5 runners who are white will smile or say hello. The other 4 won't. And usually it's disgust on their face. Yeah? And I'm quite shocked because I thought Birmingham, it's the Warsaw, the better, yeah? Thought a bit more cosmopolitan, but nah, bro. Yeah? Here's a guy in the table with his big beard out. So the thing is, what a non-crime hate incident is something that where you perceive prejudice, but it's not a hate crime, but you can report this. So I volunteer in running circles because I'm a bit of an idiot, yeah? So Warsaw Park Run, which is a very diverse park run, it's about 500 runners and like probably 100 of them are ethnic minorities. I was on the funnel when I volunteered once. So the funnel is basically the finish line. And I had to manage the people so they don't like go out of order in terms of the line. And the amount of dirty looks I had that day, I never volunteered there ever again. And the worst thing is, the guy who actually started it was a Muslim from our school who started that parkrun as well. And there was 2 Gordon on the parkrun who were like volunteering near me, and they deliberately wouldn't talk to me. Yeah? So that's the non-crime hate incident. So if you suffer one of these, you're ring the non-emergency number on the West Midlands Police, or you can just go on the internet and report it. Now the main thing is reporting anything. It doesn't matter if you feel that you discriminated against, you can still report it. So I was looking for a specific case when I was preparing the slides for this, and there was a guy called Joginder Singh So I was looking for something else. I don't know if it was another Joginder Singh. But what came up, it was another Joginder Singh, so the Singh who just died outside Holy Bones Gurdwara. He's been run over by like a street sweeper, and the guy even reversed over him. The video's quite horrific, yeah, I've got it on my phone. But anyway, so I was looking for the news story. It hadn't been released, you see, because we knew about it before. I was telling people in Leicester, basically, I got the news before they did, and the CCTV footage from the Gurdwara. So it's in the news today, it's actually on there today. So I was actually looking for that yesterday, and what came up instead of that news story was a news story of another Joginder Singh who died in Coventry. He was about 80 years old. He was attacked by a teenager girl and robbed in the city centre in Coventry. Now, how many of us would think that's actually linked to him being elderly, but also because he had at the start? We know deep down, especially people of my generation, so when I've done some of this work in Walsall College and stuff, so I was employed as a hate crime officer, and when I did stalls and stuff in Walsall College, the hijabi girls and the Sikh Patke Ale Munde, the Star Ale, when they came to the stall, they all said they've never suffered from racism. Now, I don't know if that's true, because there's a generational gap with me and them, but they were all adamant they've never suffered any racism. So it's shocking for me to hear that. I don't know if it's true. That's you know what I mean? I don't know if you lot can say yes or no. You know? But that Joginder Singh, so he died, no hate crime linked to it. The girl who killed him, because he died from the injuries subsequently, she got 44 months in jail. So we all know 44 months to 22 months, so 2 years inside. The 2 years she'd probably come out on a tag for 6 months, so she probably did 18 months in jail. Yeah. Now what you've got to realise in terms of criminal activity, so we've got it on here anyway now. In terms of criminal activity, criminals now know that if you say open your mouth while you're committing a crime and say something with racial connotation and other people hear it, it increases the sentencing. So they will purposely not say those things. Yeah? So it doesn't mean that the racial connotation isn't there, but they're clued on now in terms of what's going on. So we've done that one anyway, yeah? So as a turban Sikh, me myself, I was chased by skinheads in Coventry on a Saturday night. Yeah? And one of the kids with them was actually mixed race. Yeah? We had a bit of a because they wanted to fight with me, and I was like, yeah. And it got a bit haywire, yeah, and I couldn't pull my kirpan out, then I had to run because all 6 of them tried to rush me, yeah. But it would have been messy if my kirpan had come out, yeah. But the thing is, that's so, for me, Coventry, historically, especially around the bus station and stuff, there's a lot of racist Gore who come into Coventry. So for me, I suffered other racist incidents in the bus stop as well. And he was always like, do you switch and commit a crime? Do you know what I mean? So he was always I was always very on the edge in Coventry, especially in the city centre. And to be fair, all the Coventry sayings I know, they're the craziest guys out there. So I don't know if it's like they're used to that. So when it is normalised, you go fatigued to report or mention it. So someone like me, if I suffer a hate crime or someone swears at me while I'm running down the street, and I can understand if say, "Oi, fatty, what you doing? Yeah, trying to run." I can understand that. I think that's actually fair, yeah. But if they're actually saying Taliban, yeah, no, my bag isn't white, yeah, and I tie it properly, you know what I mean? So why are you saying that? Yeah. So the thing is, you grow fatigued to report or mention it because it's normalised. It's an everyday activity or a weekly thing or a monthly thing. So it's like I remember I did a race in Lulworth Cove, yeah, and Lulworth Cove is like, you know where Deardle Door is, yeah. So where Deardle Door is, basically I ran up and down hills there like a bargle for 14 miles, yeah. Anyway, so when you come to the finish line for that race, you come down like a hill and then literally you turn the corner and you go through, and a guy, obviously a faster guy, he overtook me and went through. I was like, whatever. I heard all the people, yeah, clapping, cheering, yeah. I got around the corner, dead silence, yeah. And the best thing is I had a witness. So someone else was waiting for me, yeah. I'll be honest, I did look a bit scary, like I had mud all down my body, like frozen on me because I'd fallen in mud, yeah, and stuff like that. But it was really shocking to me. And a Gaudy sister of mine, she said to me, she goes, hard, she goes, to be fair, they've probably never seen anyone like you. Because she goes, it's very, very white, the areas, and the running community is very white anyway. So she was saying it's not necessarily that they're racist, they were just in shock, you know? But anyway, police and others may encourage you not to pursue or pressure you to stop. Now the police, it's not necessarily that they're all being racist, because the person who was actually trying to stop me and my friend was an Uppany police officer trying to bully us. because they don't want to do the paperwork. Yeah? So there's different things going on all the time. It's not always necessarily just racist manner, but we must report all incidents of hate. So you can just do it online. You don't have to do any follow-up, but it's there. It's once you get the incident done and it's online, then it counts. So the Jewish community are very good like that. They will report everything. So even the non-crime ones and that, they'll just keep reporting it. So if you do that, yeah, that increases the budgets to that area. That increases the visibility of Sikh hate crime or incidents. So these are the sort of, under the 5 categoristics, these are the things that you can claim on. Now the worst thing is the people who actually suffer the most hate crime, which is underreported, is people with disabilities. So if you think of it like this, if there's a Sikh who's also disabled, it like confounds the actual risk, yeah, of them suffering from a hate crime. Someone's going to carry on with this. All right. So in terms of motivations of why do people commit hate crimes, so there's research done about this. On this slide it said De Montfort University, and I've deleted that, yeah. So some researchers did some work for us in Walsall around hate crime, and we've done a survey and things like that. But this is just normal sort of, it's nothing like out of the, so thrill seeking. So a child might do it to see if you react. Yeah, so I've walked through Blakenall, and there's a guy showing me his backside. Blakenall in Walsall, yeah? So there's a guy pulling his pants down, showing me his backside across the road. And I'm walking home. Yeah, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah? Because he wants me to react. He wants me to have a fight with him, yeah? I was in a suit and ties, couldn't be bothered. He was already too hot anyway. Yeah? But if he'd come across the road, then he might have changed. Defensive. Yeah? So defensive, you're taking my job. Yeah? So there should be no carpenters in the UK. They can't throw them all out, yeah? Forget it, yeah? But you're not qualified to do it. So, do you know what I mean? So it's that defensiveness, which some people do. So one of my neighbours across the road, he started playing, he was kicking off, and basically we had a programme, we get too many people at our house, I'm not going to deny it, we get too many cars, and they all get a bit jealous because the cars are all supercars, and I'm making a single again, yeah? Now the thing is, he started kicking off with the other neighbour speaking, saying, bloody Taliban, all this noise and all this stuff, I was like, yeah? I'm standing at the house, yeah? And my friends are like, ran there, yeah? I thought, don't worry, you ain't gonna do nothing. Walked across, and I said, what's your problem? He goes, you got the volume's too loud and stuff. I go, you can't even hear it from here. He goes, we're on night shift and all this. I said, all right. I said, you could just come across the road and say, turn the volume down, we'll do that. We've got no problem with doing that. And I went across to see if he'd actually going to say anything back, but he didn't. And then, because he got even more angry with me going across the road, he then went in his car and put on like Slim Shady or some like rap music. I was like, you listed black music, bro. Like, make it make sense, yeah? If you're going to be racist against me, and I listen to, I don't know, this is some opera, I don't know what, yeah, but the thing is, yeah? So he's been angry with some black music, and then my mum, being my mum, she gave him some more, so the next day I was like, yeah? Dushmano khalawa nahi, bike nahi hai thoda kam nahi, yeah? So retaliatory, so me would be the retaliatory in this situation, yeah? I'm retaliating to his stupidness, and it could be that the bark was too loud, but it really wasn't, yeah? Mission offenders, now these are the scary ones, so it can increase. So Walsall's got a history of National Front and British National Party, so a lot of the party members and the founding of those things were actually in Bloxwich, yeah? And my cousin's got a pub in Bloxwich, so when the EDL had a march in Walsall, my cousin said to me, don't go out to town. I was like, you have all the EDL drinking at your pub, and you're not gonna, and you're married to a Gaudi. But yet, you're telling me not to go to town because the EDL's out. And yet, we know Singh, who's been in the EDL for many years, since it started. Yeah, and he did talks in pubs as a Sabat Surat Singh. Yeah, so it's like, it's really confusing and confounding because the way the hatred works, they'll still pick on you. Yeah? So, the mission offenders are the scary ones. They're the ones who will actually go. They've got the ideology, like we believe that we're Sikhs, that we are on a mission to do something. So we're going to give you a case study of that as well, of a mission offender. So that's the most risky. So it starts with these things, but then if they become mission offenders, that's their sort of whole political ideology, and then life is catered around that. So one of the things we know, he went to Cannock to work in someone's house on like gas, because the gas engineer. And he said to me, he said, I went to the house, and he said, there was a Gaudi at the house. She let me in. So the whole house covered in swastikas and flags. The whole house. Yeah? And so the Gaudi in the house is a saying, Amritari, Sabat Surat. So she's saying to him, oh, it's not my house, I'm just letting you in. So she's telling him that. And he told me that, and I was working obviously in hate crime at the time, and I was like, you know what, bro, you need to actually tell the police or tip someone off, because that person could be doing a serious crime like in the future. So he didn't think of it, of reporting or anything. So the Gauri knew, because that's why she's saying, I don't live here, but she's letting him into the house. So she knew the danger of it, but he didn't realise. So hate crimes against Sikhs in the UK now. So racially, we've got brown skin. Institutional racism continues. Racially and religiously, beards and turbans. Sikhs fought for the turban legislation in workplace and motorbikes, and we've got Gurdwara allowed in the UK. It's not allowed anywhere else in Europe. There's no Gurdwara legislation. So I went to Germany recently. There's been a stabbing in Hamburg, and all the Sikhs there. The police know they wear the Gurdwara, but they're basically telling them hide them now. Yeah. So anywhere in Europe outside of the UK, we've got no legislation. It's like if you can wear another knife, then you can wear it, but otherwise there's no Gurdwara legislation. Language, racists will ridicule and swear us in broken Punjabi or Urdu words to incite us. Yeah, so the kids who were being racist to us from a house behind some hidden curtains, they were swearing in Urdu and broken Punjabi. Now we didn't know it was kids until we started outside the house, started swearing at them, saying Aju Putro. Yeah. Now the thing is, since September the 11th, there's been a whole narrative change. So at the time when September the 11th happened, 2 Sikh organisations are banned in the UK and prescribed as terrorist organisations. One of them's got the ban lifted, subsequently the other one never bothered. Yeah. So there's actually a change in narrative to say Sikhs are terrorists as well now, added on to that. And it created a worldwide target of anyone wearing a turban. Yeah. No one knows who really took down the Twin Towers. Yeah. No one really knows categorically. It's like saying Sanjanal Singh was a terrorist, yet you've got no proof. There's no criminal case in it. The same with the Twin Towers. No one really knows. Yeah. We don't have to go either way to say who did it or not. Yeah, or conspiracy. But the thing is, we don't really know. Innit? Today, in economic downturn and post-Brexit UK, let's target those different to us. That's what the narrative is. Because if you can get the people who are poor to go against them, rather than going against the people who know how to avoid tax, have offshore accounts, yeah, who never pay any tax, like Dyson, yeah, or Amazon as companies. So if we go against the poor won't revolt against us, and we can carry on ripping them off. That's the truth of what's going on. But we don't want to listen to that, because it's easier to hate someone else. They took our jobs. They took the hotel places. The government gave them the hotel places. You know what I mean? Immigrants and asylum seekers, rather than address the economic issues. Now, on the post for this talk on Instagram, where basically Sikhi made like that reel of that guy who went to the march, and ridiculed some of the racists, and so he asks, like, what would you want done with all the immigrants, I think, and he says, would all of them be dead, Now the thing is, with this stuff, rather than address these issues, they turn it into an economic issue. Now, as a Qawm, from the 80s to the 90s, we lived under a Sangharsh in India, where a lot of our Sikhs, families, were under threat of death and murder and rape. So what did a lot of those Sikhs do? They sought refuge in these countries. A lot of them entered the UK illegally. Yeah, a lot of them had asylum cases. The Sikhs who had to leave Uganda were refugees in the UK. So if we're now going to say you can only come to the UK legally and not illegally, then we've got an issue, because in the future, if India does something against us, because we're a homeless nation, then you're actually saying don't allow the Sikhs in. Because that's the truth. We're actually an oppressed nation as a minority across the world. We're a nationalist state, and that's what we are. So to actually push that narrative, you're actually discriminating against your own people. You're actually saying you shouldn't allow them in. Yeah? Now someone might say to me, well, you shouldn't break the law. My mum broke the law for many years. She was a benefit scammer. Yeah? She got caught as well at certain points. But her argument was, इन्हीं सातों लुट्टिया ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਾ ਲੁੱਟੀ ਜਾਣਾ ਤੂੰ? Yeah? So if you say Keir Starmer saying no, you've got to integrate into the UK, you've got to become British. Yeah? I'm going to become the most pakka chor in the world. I'm going to make museums with stolen gear. That's what you lot did. You haven't stopped. You still stole from Iraq, you stole from Afghanistan, and you gave Afghanistan back to the Taliban that you're saying is the worst organisation in the world. Make sense, bro. You know what I mean? It's like a dystopia that we're living in. So all these things add up. So if we're going to say integrate, learn our language, how many of you can speak another language? Put your hands up. Apart from Punjabi. Can anyone speak another language?
Yeah.
Hanji Bibi.
Oh, well, they're kind of the Asian languages that are linked to.
Oh, forget that. वो तो ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ ਥੋੜਾ ਬਹੁਤਾ है ना तुम से मिल से है ना just change the bit of words and say yeah
आप कैसे हैं?
yeah see you watch me Hindi films Bibi. Now the thing is, the reason I'm bringing that point up, as British people, we expect everyone to speak English when we go abroad. We expect that. So I know a lot of European Sikhs. The Europeans are great. So our Frenchies, France, they speak French, English, Punjabi, and German possibly as well. And all the other European nations, most of them will speak English and the European language that they're in, and then the Punjabi as well. So in the Gurdwara, when we go through Parchar, it's always a bit of a challenge, like Punjabi is English because we don't know your language, bro. Yeah? So if you go to Spain, we're saying they're making ghettos out of the UK. What have you lot done in Spain? I went to Malaga about 25 years ago, and some people in the room, when we went to Malaga, we went to like recover a Malaga soup, yeah? Now the thing is, we found all the British foods we wanted, all the soup and whatever, and there's all people speaking English, so it's like a takeover. So you're allowed to do that in other countries, but when some people come here and do it, they're not allowed to. But you can pillage those countries, but then say, we don't want those people here. Hate sells and gets headlines. Yeah, so the Daily Mail, if you follow that newspaper, they'll do like 500 headlines of like going against, and they'll do one when it comes back. Yeah, it's like a historical thing with that newspaper. Realities of hate crime, Anna. Turban, bearded Sikhs visibly identifiable as Sikhs or confused with other faiths. So in the running community, I'll use that as an example now, Hannah. I really feel for the hijabi Muslim girls, because in the running community, the two people who are visible as runners is us and them. The Sengs who wear the stara and those Bibiyan. We're the two communities are visibly seen, Hannah. And so it gets like quite challenging for them, because we usually, as a Muslim Bibi, they don't want to speak to us. Does that make sense? Because of the way they behave in their dharma, which is not a bad thing, Hannah. But the thing is, so we don't interact with them so much, but they're visibly seen in the running community as well. Now the thing is, non-turban Sikhs, I'm making this stat up, so don't shoot this messenger, yeah? Probably make up 60% of our population. Might be more, yeah?
I say it's like 80.
Yeah, I know, you know, it's like feel, isn't it? Because I'm saying 60 because there might be a lot of Sengs who are not Amritari. Does that make sense? Does that, you know what I mean? But it could be anything, so I'm not going to 60, 80, whatever it may be, yeah? Now these Sikhs, like the girl from Oldbury, they're only identifiable by a kara. Otherwise, for anyone knows, they're a Muslim. So if we start making a differentiation saying we're okay because we're Sikhs, and the EDL and the right wing and Tommy Boy loves us, yeah? But then, if you get a Munna, you can't identify where he or she is, or even a Bibi, then what happens? So they're still going to get attacked. And even with us as Sengs, we still could get attacked because someone might think we're Muslims. In the year ending March 2025, 259 recorded hate crimes against Sikhs in England and Wales, yeah? That represents 3% of all hate crimes recorded during the period, no? But yet we are 0.9% of the population of England and Wales. ठीक है? So that means a third of our population. Yeah. Now the thing is, with these hate crimes, yeah, the 259, that's again the recorded incidents which are usually probably related to another crime, a robbery or something online where people have seen it. So it might be linked to something else rather than just a specific incident. Now with the stats within hate crime, so a police officer told me to do this. If you want stats which don't exist, what you do is you do a freedom of information request on the West Midlands Police website, and they have to create the stat for you. Yeah? So I helped a lot of hate crime officers across the Midlands because we all caught on, so I made the stats, I gave them to everyone shared them. My stats are out of date now, so I'm not sharing them on this PowerPoint. I've been ill, so I haven't been able to find more up-to-date stats. So the Home Office has reported a 38% overall increase in reported religious hate crimes. Now what you need to realise is police have been underfunded, so that's why the crime rate's fallen as well. So when the police force is funded more, crime rates will go up because there's more detection. It's as simple, isn't it? But within that, you've still got a 38% increase. That means you can probably double that figure because there's so much under-reporting anyway.
And also, my mum got attacked. I was about 5 years old. She went to the park. Someone threw like a brick literally at her bug. She was bleeding and everything. And they didn't classify it as a hate crime. They just classified it as an assault.
Yeah.
So the police don't classify certain assaults as hate crimes.
Yeah, I'll cover that.
Yeah.
Benji, hold the questions till the end because they can't hear you
sorry.
anyway. Yeah, you came in late, so you didn't know. So there'll be hobby and signal. So Benji was saying that her mother was attacked, but they didn't class it as a hate crime. So there's another issue in all of this, which is if someone calls me Taliban and I report it, the police usually put it down as Islamophobia because the word Taliban's been used rather than a Sikh hate crime. So there's a real problem within this definitions as well. So Lord Indarjit kicked off about the definition of Islamophobia in the last few weeks, Hannah. Now he did that because he was actually saying, look, we're not disagreeing, but this definition's too wide. It's going to cause us problems as well as Sikhs. So in terms of reporting detection, it's quite nuanced, Hannah, unless you know what you're doing. So you need to, when we report these things, the police are not going to add stuff unless we can.
I tried to get it changed to hate crime. They didn't change it.
Yeah, because they're going to have some witness saying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I said it. My sister said it.
No, but did you hear him say anything?
No, he didn't say anything. He just threw
Yeah,
it.
well, that's what. So they won't do it because they're based on evidence in terms of like, we know, me know, they've done it because she's an Uppany, but the police are looking for evidence. So you've got no witnesses to say they said she was a Paki or something. Do you know what I mean? That's what the basis they're working on, because they know it won't stick with the CPS. So it gets quite hard on her. So we know deep down why they've done it. We did that at the start, Benjamin. You were in here, by the way. Yeah, so it was done as well. We covered that. But 169% increase in reported hate crimes against Sikhs. So these figures, at the end, these are from Sikh Federation UK. So they did a press release in the last few weeks. So I've not verified these figures, but I'll put it on them, yeah, for the verification because they've said this. 91% of the cases reported have come from the Metropolitan Police in relation to London. Now, it's a bit messy with that comment there, yeah, because there's an organisation that was set up by the Sikh Police Association called Sikh Guard. And when you put a crime on Sikh Guard, it goes to the Met. And then the Met sends it down to the local police force. So the initial detection rate is at the Met. Yeah? So that's why that 91% might be there. It's not necessarily that. So you'd have to go under that figure. Now the stats are very confusing as well with anything in hate crime. You have to take it with a pinch of salt, or you have to have like other factors to say what happened and why it happened. So it's not straightforward in normal statistics as well. The British Sikh report of 2023 has got some indicative data around Sikhs reporting hate crime and stuff, so you can look at that. I didn't include that because I didn't want to go on too much, Hannah. And what the Sikh Federation was saying, 91% case in Hannah, but 70% of Sikhs live outside of London. So again, we don't really know in terms of that. Now, these are the case studies we're going to cover, Hannah. So growing up doing Parchar, this is one of the biggest things that happened to us as Parchariks. So Vijay Singh, he committed suicide in 1996, Hannah. And it was a big thing for us because we had links to Manchester Sikh societies and stuff, Hannah. We had a massive influence in Manchester Parchar at the time as well, Hannah. So this was a poem that he wrote. So the family only found out that he committed suicide because of racism when they read his diary. So no one ever knew, Hannah. So my money was taken Monday, Tuesday names called, Wednesday my uniform torn, Thursday my body boarding with blood, Friday it's ended, Saturday freedom, Saturday he hung himself. So those are the final diary pages of Vijay Singh, Hannah. So in 1996, 13 years old, Hannah. So he's bullied and racially abused at school, Hannah, continuously. There was 2 Singhs that we were working with who murdered someone in the UK, Hannah. And so young offenders is really a bad place to be anyway. Anyone who's been in prison or young offenders is worse than a normal prisoner. So these 2 guys, they kept the case inside, but they were just normal to happen. So through Parchar, they kept the case and stuff while they were inside. But in Dover, where they were the first prison they were posted in, when they used to go into the showers, they used to put all the prisoners into the showers at the same time. And then when they to walk out the showers, they used to have to punch their way out the whole of the showers. So once or twice a week, that's what they had to do. So they'd come out with black eyes, and it was like a weekly thing. And it was like a given that you're going to have to fight today. And you're taking on 10, 15 guys in the showers. That's going to happen now. Yeah? So when people say to us it doesn't exist, yeah, we've got little living examples of people who've been through this, Hannah. Murder of Balbir Singh Sodhi. So after September the 11th, this guy was shot dead by a white racist looking for a Muslim. Yeah? So he owned a petrol pump. He was outside actually rearranging American flags. So the flag, I was going to say something there. Yeah? The flag people in the UK, yeah? So this guy was carrying a flag. Yeah? He was rearranging his flags on his forecourt, American flags, and he got shot dead. Yeah? So Frank Roque, who murdered him, also, after shooting him, so he shot 3 bullets, killed Sodhi, when he shot a Lebanese American petrol station owner and shot at a family of Afghan descent, a home of a family, yeah? Fortunately, no one else was injured. So Sodhi was the first one. Now, what's really shocking is, he was put in the list of the September the 11th victims, and then they removed it after 10 years. So his name's been taken off that as well, yeah? 17 more deaths of Asians linked to 9/11. Many UK Sikhs received racist taunts such as Taliban, but then recorded as Islamophobia, and that we've already mentioned. So when September 11th happened, I was actually working at Gurdwara Council in Birmingham, and we used to work at Stratford Road Gurdwara. So our offices were upstairs, above what's the gym now, I think, and so we got a phone call from our Baba Mohan Singh, yeah, SAS, and he goes, "News are going to come. You don't need to be on the news." And we're like, "What we got to do?" So all you got to do is come outside. I'll do the talking to the reporter from BBC News, whatever. You're not going to have to walk in and out the Gurdwara. Yeah, we're like, okay. So like 3-4 of us at this time, and we just have to make this like shot. We're walking out the Gurdwara. You know how many phone calls I got? All the apne, siane, thinking, "Ki ho gaya? Jail nu jana ya?" Because they didn't understand the news report, bechare. And then we had phone calls from apna Seva Singh Mandla, and I used to like PA to buy a side from Nishkamana. And Mandla was basically saying to us, "Tell everyone not to wear white dastara." At the time when this happened, and he was saying to us, Mandla was saying to us, "Don't wear gold dastara." And Mandla was like really close to us, and he was saying, "Don't like wear." We were like, "We ain't gonna stop wearing gold dastara." And we don't wear white anyway, but we're not going to stop wearing gold dastara. But that's how high level the fear was, from Sikhs in the UK. And then after 7/7, Sikhs started wearing those t-shirts to say, "Don't freak, I'm Sikh" on the tube, which didn't help the issue really, because you're saying it's okay, don't hit me, but hit the Muslim. Yeah. So in this case as well, he got shot, mistaken identity. But does that mean if he was a Muslim, would it be allowed? Is it justified to do that? That's the question you need to ask, Anna. And this is one of the worst things that happened in the UK, and it's on our doorstep, all of us in this room. And you probably never heard of this guy. Yeah? So a few weeks ago in jail, the guy who murdered him died. So that's why it's come back up in the press in the last few weeks. So he's died, the guy who murdered him, Anna. So a Ukrainian neo-Nazi who came legally to the UK, came legally to the UK, had only been here for 5 days on a temporary work placement. I think he was in Coventry where he was placed, and what he did is, so Mohammed Salim, 82-year-old grandfather, came out of Green Lane Mosque in Birmingham, in Small Heath, walking home, 10 p.m, stabbed to death. Now the guy afterwards said he killed him because he thought, no witnesses, old man, so he stabbed him to death. Now what he also did, this is how he gets caught in the end, he planted bombs at Aisha Mosque in Walsall, which is in Palfrey, not far from Carmel Gurdwara, Wolverhampton, that big mosque near Cannock Road that you can see on the roundabout, and a Tipton Mosque. Now the Tipton Mosque, because the guy was a bit dumb, he did it on a Friday, but he got the Friday prayers time wrong. Because he got the time wrong, he didn't kill anyone. But if he got the timing right, he possibly would have killed or injured a lot of people. So it was a nail bomb. The other 2 bombs at Aisha Mosque in Walsall. Aisha Mosque is actually the biggest mosque in Walsall. You can't tell from outside, but inside it is. So from the street level, you can't tell, Anna. So I used to go regularly to Aisha Mosque with my work. So if you think of it like this, if I'm coming out of Aisha Mosque, a racist doesn't know if I'm a Sikh, they could stab me to death outside the mosque because I've been inside the mosque, because I had to frequent mosques because of my work. So luckily the other 2 bombs didn't detonate, but it's from the Tipton one that the police caught on and tracked him down, and then he got convicted. But no one puts this in the press as a terrorism incident, and so this guy is a mission offender, like we said at the start. So he actually came with a mission to murder and kill people, Anna. So how do you report hate crime in the West Midlands? Are you or the victim in danger? If yes, call 999. Simple as that. Don't mess about, That's the first point of call, If no, you can report the incident through True Vision Victim Support, West Midlands Police. You can also go on that Sikh Guard website, report it on there. Yeah, so there's many routes. So if you go on the police website, you'll just see those routes anyway. You can also go to Crime Stoppers as well. If you see, experience, or hear, or read hate, report it. That's what you've got to do, innit? If it's online even. Yeah, so some women did a citizen's arrest on someone the other day in London. Yeah, a guy who's, I think he's part of one of the water companies, and he was polluting the water centre, so they surrounded him, innit? So I'm saying the Sikhs should get together, find out Katie Hopkins, where she is, yeah, and we'll arrest her. And say she said this about crusade, so we're doing a citizen's arrest. Innit? And then we've done a crusade. Support, if you need support, this is where we really fall down. And the support isn't always very good, even by the organisations that are out there. Because I've worked in hate crime, I know it's really bad. So, and the police, they've got no resources to investigate their own crimes, let alone, you know what I mean, to be doing low-level stuff sometimes. And it's not to say that hate crime isn't important, but if they're dealing with a murder case or something else, their resources are going to that, not rather than the small detection stuff and that. So, if you put in, like, reporting hate crime, it goes to his website and they report it, yeah? And then this Gurdwara is the only Gurdwara in the West Midlands which is seen as a local hate crime reporting centre. No other Gurdwara in the West Midlands is a reporting centre. So you should be able to come into this Gurdwara. The committee was supposed to tell me who the person is, but we'll just say go to the office and you can report it there and it'll be fed into the system. But because it's a Gurdwara, we'll be able to give more support to that person as well through the system. Now, a lot of the things that the Gurdwara experienced while they were doing this in the last year or two is a lot of the hate that was coming in was actually inter-Sikh hatred. So I hate the Italians, I hate the Freshies. So the actual hatred was coming through was that. So it wasn't like external, the majority of them, because Gurdwara, you know what I mean? So they come and say, so, do you know what I mean? So that's not to say it's not a hate crime, it probably is, yeah? But the thing is, that's how ridiculously we are in that in terms of our implementation of our Sikh. You know, we can all joke and laugh about different things, but we shouldn't be doing that, Hannah. Sikh Helpline, Sikh Guard I've mentioned, so we've got a website. Sikh Guard again, you get confused sometimes. So if you report the hate crime, you put it in, and then it just takes you back to the homepage, like, what happened? Yeah? But they're updating the page, and hopefully, so the Sikh Police Association sent that website, but you can just fill out a form if you need more support. Now, we all know that we've got a sort of tentative or pressured relationship with the police in certain aspects, but the truth is, majority of the Sikh officers are there to help us as a Qawm. Regardless of their affiliations with an association, whatever it may be, they're off the record. There's a lot of stuff that the Sikh officers do for us, and it continues. So they are our Qawm, they're not, and they experience racism themselves within their jobs as well, institutionally. So when I worked in Warsaw, one of the highest commanding officers was actually racist to my manager, and we're leading on hate crime Warsaw and saying, oh, things like, oh, you sure you're not going to bomb me? That's how ridiculous it is, yeah. And I was trying to force that person to report it, and he never did because he didn't have the talent to do it. But True Vision is a charity that set up to support victims, citizen advice, you know, of Crime Stoppers and the police. Crime Stoppers you can be quite cute with. You can give them more information which then gets fed into the system. So if you want to anonymously tip off the police, you can do it through Crime Stoppers. So Crime Stoppers gets, so that's how we've done stuff in the past, where people don't want to actually get linked to reporting the crime. If you put into Crime Stoppers, the Crime Stoppers has got a link to the police every day, I think it is, an upload. So the police will then chase. So you can actually share intelligence through that and not get tracked. So that's for yourselves. I think that's it, Anna. Thanks for listening. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh. Turn the live off. Then we can let it rip. Is it off? So